Welcome back. Conversation with Andrew Heim here on Doug Pagitt Radio on AM 950 and DougPagittRadio.com. Andrew has written a book called The Sword of the Lord. And I'll tell you, I have a hard time saying that because I never know how much of the W to pronounce in sword. I grew up saying sword, and it sounds very funny when I hear myself saying it now. So The Sword of the Lord is the name of the book, and it chronicles the rise of Christian fundamentalism even within Andrew's own family. It comes from a prominent family of the 20th century fundamentalism, and has tried to extend his life beyond it, and has written a book that tells the story of his own life and the development of fundamentalist Christianity. So Andrew, thanks again for the book and for being on the show.
Yeah, great to be here.
And the book releases today, and you can buy it on Amazon. There's a little program going on tomorrow to try to buy it on Amazon.com and have a whole bunch of people buy it the same day, and that helps raise awareness of the book. So if you want to pick it up on Monday, the 16th of May, that would certainly be appreciated. Now, Andrew, how did you decide to write the story about your own family narrative this way? And was that a difficult thing to do? Because you name names and tell stories about your own struggle and family struggles and meeting famous, religious fundamentalists. And was that a difficult thing for you?
Well, I'd say that in some way the beginning of the book, for me, the beginning of the writing process really was about, it was 31 years ago when my grandfather died. My granddad was John R. Rice, who founded the newspaper, The Sword of the Lord, probably the most prominent and influential fundamentalist journal in the 20th century. And when he died at the age of 80, in 1980, I went to the funeral, of course, and Jerry Falwell, a close friend and an ally of my granddad's, was the preacher at the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
And
so for those who don't know, that really puts the family at a. I mean, Jerry Falwell was in the 1980s, really kind of represented that 1980s expression of Christian fundamentalism, and for him to be the preacher at your grandfather's funeral really shows the power of the place that your family had in Christian fundamentalism.
Well, Falwell's first published sermons, were published in the Sword of the Lord newspaper, mm-hmm. and my granddad then helped to introduce Falwell to a national audience of conservative evangelicals, and then in the late 1970s, Falwell created the Moral Majority, which was a political expression of conservatism, and the moment of my granddad's funeral was it was just a couple of months after Ronald Reagan had been elected to the presidency with the help of the Moral Majority. Mm-hmm. And so when at the dinner after the funeral, a well-meaning soul, probably one of my aunts, put the two place tags. We had about 80 people at the family dinner after the funeral, and Jerry was there as well. And everybody sat at a place at a plate that had a place tag or a name tag on it, and my name tag and Jerry's were right next to each other. Mm-hmm. I think that was because I was the black sheep of the family. Yeah. And people kind of hoped and expected that I would be able to, perhaps Jerry Falwell would be able to influence me to give up my evil ways and return to the fold in a way. Mm-hmm. That didn't really happen. Falwell was much more interested in talking about politics, and he had just returned from Ronald Reagan's Western White House the day before, where he had spent a week with Reagan, and he talked about the importance of having, as he said, a fundamentalist in the White House. And I, at the time, was a revolutionary communist, and I was interested in paying a lot more attention to my tuna noodle casserole than I was having a conversation with Falwell about fundamentalism and about Ronald Reagan. And I was deeply conflicted. On the one hand, I really loved my granddad. He was an amazing and wonderful human being. He had a great sense of humor. He was an upright man who was utterly honest and principled in all of his dealings, personally and publicly. And I admired him in a way that I can't even express. On the other hand, I strongly disagreed with his views on the Vietnam War and on the civil rights movement, on a host of other social issues. And his expression of Christianity, I didn't know how to connect with. And can I ask you, how old were you at the time of that funeral? I was 30 years old.
You were
I was 30 years old.
Yeah, and now you're and now you're 61.
I'm 61. At the time of that funeral, I was doing my very best to overthrow the imperialist bourgeoisie internationally as a revolutionary. And what I didn't really understand was that my politics at the time were a mirror image of the rigid fundamentalism of the earlier 20th century.
Oh,
I was in a lot of ways I was just as absolutist, just as categorical in my thinking, just as certain that I was right and anybody who disagreed with me was wrong, as I'd been years earlier when I was a fundamentalist Baptist myself. So the last 30 years have been a process, a journey that I've taken to try to figure out how I can move beyond my own limitations, the rigidity of my own thinking, and come to terms with and really return to that vibrant faith and a powerful understanding of religion in a way that I didn't know how to do at an earlier point in my life.
And that's where I think this book can be very powerful for people, because there are some who are in their first few months or years of having an expression of saying, I don't want to just be the other side of the coin. I don't want to just continue to operate in that same currency, battling for power. I really want to think about another way of being a person, a human being in the world, and another way of being a religious person in the world. And I think that you offering up a 30-year journey on that is really helpful. For those who have had a chance to look at the book, and I know have heard you talk about these things, do you find that to be the case, that people find your story to be inspiring for them as they enter into a path that might be something similar?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you that, frankly, for me, learning how to be a human being, my examples were my grandparents as much as anybody else. Not just my granddad, my grandmother, who died in 1989, and I was at her funeral as well. I was at the time still fairly estranged from my family and not sure how to deal with that heritage. And I was deeply affected by my grandmother's death. And I finally understood the reason it mattered so much to me was that my grandmother, more than any other human being in the world, had expressed what absolute unconditional love was all about. She was my model for the love of Jesus. And she took me back to the childhood song I remember singing, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, all around the world, all around the world. And another a little song that I sang in Sunday school I remember so well, Jesus loves the children of the world, red and yellow, black and white, all are precious in his sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. My grandmother was that spirit for me, and in a lot of ways, this book is an attempt to live out my grandmother's love and my grandmother's life, as well as my granddad's in my own life.
Well, you're hearing from Andrew Himes. Andrew is the author of the book, The Sword of the Lord, and it's the story of his family's process through fundamentalism. And you can pick up the book. If you can't find it anywhere else, go to Doug Pagitt Radio on Facebook, and there'll be a link to it. Andrew, thanks for the book. Thanks for all that you're doing, and wish you the very best with it.
Well, thank you so much, Doug. I'm really happy to be with you.
We'll be back here with natural health coach Shelley Pagitt after the break.